Hey everyone, welcome back to the Inner Forecast, your space to gain insight and foresight for the month ahead. So you know where to focus your time and energy. I'm Jen Rose, your host, a certified astrologer, Reiki practitioner, holistic nutritionist, and quantum healing hypnosis guide. Each month has its own energy, and my goal is to support your intuition and life planning through astrology, while also bringing in a special guest to share their magic and wisdom to help you navigate the month ahead. Today, we're diving into a powerful intersection between astrology and somatic healing in Scorpio season. We're joined with Jungle Flower, and she is a somatic healer, a poet, a speaker. She is trauma informed writing guide and sound bath facilitator, and she's based in Toronto. So, Jungle Flower, welcome to the Inner Forecast.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen.
What I would love to hear about from you is how we always start the sessions, which is introducing yourself, sharing what your sun, moon, and rising are, and a little bit about what you do.
So I'm Jungle Flower, use she, her pronouns, and I started my journey in wellness after escaping a psychologically abusive relationship. There was a very strong desire that I felt, as many people who've experienced similar traumas feel, to um, do something to try to prevent it from happening to other people or to support other people in their healing journeys.
Mm.
But then after that, there was also shock. How is it this common? And yet no one seems to be talking about it. Within my little group of friends, I think each of them had a story that they could share about trauma. So that really stayed with me. And then when I had that call to do something to bring the survivor community together, what I decided to do was create an event series where people could share their stories and experience that same sense of relief that I had felt when I finally opened up to my friends. And I wanted to create a space where people could feel heard and believed and supported, and just to know they were not alone in what they were going through. And one event turned into two events, turned into three. And so we started that in 2012 and have done countless events by this point, all free, as it is my gift back to the world. In 2021, we received the Mayor's Community Safety Award from the City of Toronto. So when I started this work, I was a photographer. I also had a full-time job at my family business. And then this work of supporting people in their healing and seeing the changes that were happening in people's lives because of it, I decided to make it my full-time thing gradually. And this is actually what has informed my wellness practice, which for the most part is the sound baths that I do, because that's in very high demand right now. But as more and more people are learning about somatics, it's my years of experience now, 13 years of doing this work, that informs what I do. So yes, that is where I'm at today. I love the creative side of things, but honestly, taking a beautiful photograph does, for me, pales in comparison to seeing the shift that can happen for someone in a single session where they arrive tense, closed up, stressed out, nervous, anxious, and they leave open, glowing, full of vitality, happy, grateful. And so it was a very, very clear choice for me when it came to what do I want to focus my energy on. So that's how I ended up in wellness, and with the blessing of being able to meet you along the way.
What's so beautiful about what you just said is that I feel like photography and is similar to holding space in that sense, because we do have all those energy access points within ourselves. And sometimes just like sitting there and having a mirror, in a way to kind of point out, hey, do you notice that you're doing this? Or do you notice this? Do you notice your body's doing this when you're saying this? Can really help us be like, bring that even deeper awareness into, oh, like being more conscious of that and then connecting the dots even further. Now, for the people that are listening, because this is so, like, I feel like photography is like you have to have an eye. You're kind of seeing something that maybe someone isn't seeing or capturing it, and it doesn't evolve words. It just evolves an image to show you, and it kind of feels like you do that in real time. So for those listening, what is your rising sun and moon? And how does that lived experience? Because that might play into this whole beautiful, profound journey that you just shared with us to get us to this point.
First of all, that was so beautiful of you to pick up on and to point out. My goodness. I have to sit with what you just said another time later on, but that was so deep. Oh my gosh.
Well,
You know,
just so you know, astrology is pattern recognition. So
wow.
it's that's part of what I do as well in a different way. So seeing people and then seeing how they are similar. This is great because for those that are listening or watching, you know, I go into the space and it's sort of one-sided in one way and you holding space for me, but this is a conversation which is so beautiful and this is what I love doing too. So I'm excited for us to get into this, but I'm glad that that resonated.
Very much. So I'm a Scorpio sun sign, Cancer rising, and Leo moon.
Hmm.
And can you repeat your question? Was it how has that?
Like how does that live within you? I mean, you shared a little bit. What does that mean to you in terms of like having a sun that's Scorpio, a Leo moon, and a rising Cancer?
The one thing I will share is it was only this year that I was able to find out my rising and my moon
Hmm.
because my mother didn't know my birth time. It's not on my birth certificate. And so you might know the name. It's slipping my mind right now, but there's a name for how you can kind of answer questions to figure those things out.
To find your birth time or to find
Yeah.
I'm I mean, in the past, I have helped people like find it based on asking them specific questions of things they've gone through.
Yeah.
I'll pick up dates with clients, and it's something I don't offer online. But if you're in a pinch, I will say on here that I'll go back to certain dates, and we can kind of retrace our steps because history kind of helps us figure out our birth time and more
Exactly.
specificity. Yeah.
There's a name for it that I don't remember. I'm not sure if you know it, but that's how I was able to find it out.
Okay.
And I know that the government here in Toronto or Ontario or Canada, I don't know, but they have that option where you can get the long form birth certificate. So
Mm,
I think my info should be there. And I'm just mentioning in case anyone else is on that journey of searching
yeah.
it. So
Good.
I don't know about Leo, but I will say, so with Scorpio, I am uh birth, death, resurrection all the time, constantly. So I have lived many lives in this life. I've been a photographer, yes. I've had a clothing line. I've been an interviewer. I could go on and on and on. I've done so many different things. And yeah, just new iterations of myself that have led to being, having a very rich life. And that was my goal a long time ago. I felt robbed of certain things because of the traumas that I've gone through. So I promised myself I would live a rich life. And so that's what it feels like it has been. Cancer, I don't know if I can talk too much about it, but I will say, and again, this also is probably, the water signs and being a Scorpio as well, but I'm so in touch with my emotions. I feel things very deeply, very strongly. And maybe you can give me some insight in the Leo moon and how that might be, showing up in my life or how, might be how I approach this life or how I feel this life.
Just by you sharing with me, um, beyond the beautiful work that you do, you are a very creative person by nature, and I feel that in your expression, in the words that you use, in if you haven't had a chance to checking out your poetry because words are spells, and even in my session with you, you were like, I am asking you to do some creativity. You need to get out of your head and do some art, okay? And that's the thing is that play, like because Leo is about being playful and allowing yourself to be seen and felt in the ways. And it's interesting to have that rising Cancer because it's the lens at which you look at life and the way that life can look at you. It's the front door you go out of, is how I like to say. Sometimes our aura. And I feel like getting to experience that, I would say you're very nurturing by nature. And I feel that you are receptive because water is very sensory, right? If you think you're in the womb, you don't need words. You don't need words to feel. And water signs kind of have that. They are already tapped into that. So you kind of understand the energy at play and the person in front of you and how to sort of lend that nurturance that allows them to kind of like relax into what needs to be felt in that moment. And that's how I can experience it through getting to see you in your work. But I imagine with the way that you have navigated that Scorpio season, which we're going to talk a little bit about, and you being a Scorpio, which is very intentional for this episode. Um, it is that time of emotional exploration and transformation and releasing what no longer serves you. We all carry that Scorpio energy, and during the season, this part of you is being spotlighted. The part of you that wants to be a detective, that wants to notice what's unsaid, that needs to go deep, that has experienced cycles of death and rebirth. You can sort of take a look at where Scorpio falls in your own chart, because this is the area that's going to become our 30-day focus for the month. And it's a kind of a cheat code, if you will, to understanding how to know where your time and energy is being asked to be looked at and spent. So for me personally, I'll just share it's in my sixth house, and that highlights for me the work that I do and my daily routine and my health. So over my lifetime, there have been like three major shifts in how I care for my body. Like I've had such a profound experience with like my wellness routine. I was in the film industry originally, and just like living a different lifestyle to holistic nutrition, which is like a complete pivot to like learn how to take care of myself in a different way. And again, these are all these like paths that I've gone through in their own cycles of transformation. And the placement also shapes like how I help others, I feel too. Like if you have, I have Scorpio in my work arena. So for me, it's about like, how do we transform your routine, like your work? How do we look at daily practices in meaningful ways? And for you, Jungle Flower, for you, it's in like the seasons in the fifth house. So that makes so much sense because you create almost like alchemy through words, through play, through self-expression. And the fifth house is all about that. And it's about showing up in the world, and that's exactly what I feel like your work embodies. And I know it's not a like linear journey as you have put through your experiences. And that is also the house of romance. So like understanding the difference of what that means or what that looks like.
No, that was incredibly beautifully put and so helpful for me to hear all of that and just to connect the dots. That was so accurate. Thank you so much.
And I even actually have, just mentioning out there, I have a free guide in my bio to help you guys locate the season that you're in if you need support or just wanting to understand how to like lean into this a little bit more. You're like, Jen, I hear you what you're saying, but I'm not sure how to find it. I have a free guide for you guys to check out. I want the viewers to hear and understand a little bit more about the somatic practices. Maybe you could explain a little bit about what somatic healing is.
Yeah, of course. There's many different approaches to somatics, but somatics have to do with how our bodies store the energy of deeply painful experiences, because trauma is not the event, but what happens in our body. When we go through those experiences, sometimes as a coping, as a survival mechanism, we kind of, we go into the survival responses. And again, the energy of these experiences can get stuck in our bodies. And when we do not process them, either because, it feels inaccessible, or we don't have the tools, or we just, are afraid to, whatever it might be, that energy can manifest and show up as different things. It can become depression, insomnia, anxiety, panic attacks, exacerbated PTSD symptoms, physical pain even. And so through somatic approaches, we can begin to move this energy out of the body. And that's what my focus is with my work, both with specifically the somatic support sessions that I offer, but also with the sound bath. The sound bath for a lot of people is a very physical experience. They feel it through their bodies. If it's a solo session, the bowls are actually placed on their body, so the vibrations are felt very deeply. But that's what somatics is. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most effective ways to move trauma out of the body, to resolve that trauma, to bring the nervous system into a more regulated state, And I absolutely love it. And I think I call it Somagics because I think it's so effective. And if I were to invest in another training of some sort, it would 100% be more somatic training because such a powerful modality.
So would you say that every session's a little bit different with each person depending on what they need? I know I've come in for 2 sessions and they were astronomically different based on where I was at. But I would love to hear a little bit if you're able to share, of course, how you guide people through shifts and, when someone's in a season of transformation, how do you help them start to notice like what's really going on and whether that's in their body?
Yeah, it's again going back to what you said about me observing very attentively. That's what's going on. So if yeah, I do usually have an approach that I take, and I follow that. But if a client seems to need something different, or if they've come to a session before and they're here for their second session, and I can sense that where they're at might need something different, I'm definitely pulling from my toolkit to see what would be supportive for them. So it can be very free flowing, but essentially I invite people to slow down. So
Mm.
the somatic sessions have very little sort of, I guess traditionally they have very little to do with talking. Talking is one of the channels through which we process things, but it's also the least effective of all the somatic channels. And so it's really more about sensing what's going on in their body. So when people are actually booking the session, I ask that question because it's that important. Do you have access to feeling what's going on in your body? And some people just don't, or it just doesn't feel accessible because they're not yet comfortable with tuning into their body and what's being held there. But once people are here, there's just an invitation, an unspoken invitation, quite honestly, to slow down. I think it's the energy of the space, maybe my own energy, but people just start to settle as they walk in, as they sit down, and we begin. So much of our awareness gets clouded by rushing, by overthinking, by even numbing ourselves. And so in sessions, my goal is to guide clients into dropping into sensation, noticing where there's tension, where there's a sense of pleas of what feels good, what feels pleasant, and even noticing the breath. And with breathing, it's always interesting because not everyone feels comfortable taking deep breaths. For some people, it can make them hyperventilate. So I don't lean on guiding them into their breath too often, but I am watching for how they're breathing, and if their breathing looks rapid or shallow, or if it seems deeper. And I always notice when someone's breathing starts to deepen and slow down. So that's a big sign that I look for, that they're getting into a more settled state, and we can start to kind of maybe approach the areas that felt inaccessible for them before. But essentially, we are approaching what's going on in a client's body with curiosity, with openness, instead of judgment. And when we do that, the body begins to reveal patterns on its own. And I think for a lot of people, it can be difficult to do this on their own. And it's not that the techniques are difficult, but just sort of navigating, approaching, and investigating on their own can feel really daunting if there's a lot going on. And so just having that other presence that's grounded, that's informed, that can help guide them through the process. Because I don't use the word healer for myself. I believe whoever comes here, they're their own healer. And I'm just doing my best to guide them through the process and to hold space for their healing. And when I say hold space, I get this visual of like a sandstorm in the desert, and there's a tent, and I'm inside the tent, like making sure the walls are holding us up. They're supporting us. They're protecting us from the elements, so that the person who's entering the tent can be like, clear all the sand out of my hair, off my skin, out of my clothes, and I'm just doing the work to hold the structure in place so that they can do that work. And so, and one more thing that I do want to touch on is, I do teach people tools to weave into their day-to-day lives so that they can, begin these processes on their own, these practices, and really learn and feel the impact of their own conscious awareness and their own touch But I always like to stress that we are wired to be of community. We are not meant to take care of ourselves at all times. We need each other. We were, most of our evolutionary history, we've been a part of tribes. That's meant survival for us. But society today has pushed like individualism, and so many of my clients, women in particular, come to me overburdened and undersupported. And if I think that were to shift, I'd probably have a lot less clients, quite frankly.
You know what's so interesting? As you were speaking about what you were doing, I was getting the imagery and sort of like, so I see energy through people's charts and how it kind of dances and comes alive. And it's just like what you said, they come into the space and maybe it's me, the space itself that helps them kind of come home to themselves. So that's what I feel in your Cancer rising. It is the sign of home, coming home to yourself, feeling cared for, you're good. And that's at the front door, literally the door we open to see to you. And and what's interesting about having your sun in the fifth house, it is the house of being present.
Mhm.
And that and and also it's Scorpio for anyone who's listening, we deal with power in our life and it helps you kind of come back into your power is what I feel experience is. It's like coming back into your power. Not that we've lost it, not that it's far from us, but it's just like connecting to it um, in a deeper way.
And that sense of support can be so healing on its own, just to be in the presence of someone who's not judging, who's encouraging, release and tears, and it's okay, it's all welcome here.
And something actually I feel that I'm just getting an intuitive nudge to put on here is I feel sometimes in the spiritual community, we get sort of spiritually bypassing things in trying to stay positive and trying to, just keep your chin up kind of thing. But actually, when you realize when you ignore these things or you jump them, it's not part of what's going to help you transform them. And that's what I feel Scorpio does really well. Through the darkness, we see the light. We have to kind of, I like my favorite thing to say is, I like to have my shadow in front of me so it doesn't take me out from behind.
Few more places to scream.
Yes, like in the woods, please. Like, okay. So I'm also really curious from your perspective when someone is carrying energy like this, how do they begin to like recognize it, in the moment or start shifting?
Yeah, energy patterns usually show up as repetition. So whether it's a thought loop or an emotion that always returns or tension in the same area of the body. And so the key is presence. Presence. Once you notice the pattern, you can soften it. Again, so often we might try to avoid this by overthinking, by numbing, by distractions, but presence again, and sort of sending that message that it's okay. Like, to me, it's some of the most healing words I've ever heard. Or it's okay. Yeah, and also breath is one of the fastest ways for those whom breath is accessible and deep breathing is accessible. So deep exhalation, sighing, humming as well, which also works to tone the vagus nerve. But sound is another one. Allowing the body to resonate with a frequency can shift the internal state, and it can break a loop, which is incredible. The clients who are coming to see me for sound baths alone on a weekly basis are experiencing so much expansion in their life. And I think a similar thread that's led them to me is the word stuck, the feeling of stuckness. And so the sound just has this beautiful potential. And again, talking about our experiences is not necessary when you're coming for a sound bath. You can just be and allow the sound to do its thing, as long as you have that openness toward it and can be willing to, if something does come up, because it's coming up to be cleared away, to not get carried away with what's coming up, to not ruminate, obsess, to worry about what's coming up, and just to be in that state of observation and allowing it to be released. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Awareness can create, awareness is the first step, but it's the first step toward a small shift that can create a ripple.
I feel music is a gift in this world.
What would life be without music, really? And I'll, as I had mentioned earlier, I've done so many different things over the course of my life. But the singing bowls, the sound baths, I feel like because I'm doing them so frequently now and I'm constantly in these vibrations, this is the one thing that has led to um, the most rapid evolution for myself. Like I'm seeing myself change, I'm seeing myself shift just constantly and in a way that I really love. In a way that I really love. So, sound is truly, truly powerful. And I'm so happy that it's becoming more known, that it has this effect because it's natural, it's non-invasive, it's gentle, and yet it can be so effective.
So, from an astrology perspective, each planet has its own wisdom to share and spectrum similar to emotions, not bad or good. It just is, right? And so, if you're feeling tension or you're noticing patterns, you can ask, like, what is the planet trying to teach me right now? That's how I always look at it. And for instance, like Saturn might ask you to set a boundary, to set a boundary. Or for Mars, it might be like, okay, I need to move my body. And the moon, it might be like encouraging you to feel and name an emotion. Something like that is an example. I know there was an aspect recently where people were like feeling a little crunchy. And it's like, okay, but big things sort of came through during that window of time of like, okay, maybe I need to pivot, or I didn't know this until now. And so that's why I feel like no transits are bad or good, for lack of a better word. It's just there to help us understand the ebbs and flows of the process of being and existing and moving forward, or just understanding journey.
It's so lovely to hear your insights and to hear everything you're sharing. You really have such a beautiful and clear way of expressing so much knowledge and wisdom. It's really beautiful.
I like to see things as a story, and I think that how we were talking earlier, how different things have brought us to this point, and nothing was a misstep. Everything kind of evolved with us. I
Mm.
feel like I was always curious about people's stories, and through film and through that experience was like my first sort of look at it and understanding of what we're trying to do. And it's in a way the journey of a story is like the beginning, the middle, the arc, the end. And obviously lifetimes are a little longer than that, but it's kind of similar to that interest and understanding. I think I've always been someone who's like, why are we here? what
Mhm.
are we what are we here, like what are we doing, what does this mean? So from your lens, how do you tell the difference between carrying something as a part of your story versus in a place where you're ready to transform it and release it?
That's a great question. A long-term pattern feels like home, even if it feels uncomfortable. So there's like a weight to it. There's history and even a sense of inevitability. Whereas when someone is ready to release a pattern, there's a different quality to it. There's like a restlessness, again, a sense of feeling stuck, a spark of courage, even like a bit of frustration that feels like I can't carry this anymore. So it's almost like, the buildup before a volcano explodes, kind of like there's this like, which I love because it's like pressure is bringing things to the surface so that it can be released. And it's just so deep. And there is just so much wisdom in our emotions, as you said, and in our bodies, and how they're, no matter what, they're always doing their best to keep us safe and to protect us and keep us alive. And so that's why we can get stuck in certain patterns because it's familiar and that's what our nervous system is seeking. It's seeking familiarity. So if something does get to the point of like, okay, I need to let this go. I need to stop carrying this. I need to put this down. I want more. I want better for myself. I want different. That's, it takes a lot of courage. And it's just such a sign that someone is ready for that shift. So the moment of friction is a sign that transformation is possible. And readiness isn't about, it's messy. It's not about perfection. And it's simply like really a willingness and an openness to try something different, to welcome in a shift.
I feel retrogrades are a lot like that. People feel a certain way about them, but they're so great for us to understand things in a different way and to have to slow down a little bit, to look at maybe a pattern or the uncomfortableness and be like, wait a second, this isn't in alignment with me anymore, or I don't want to move this way as much anymore. And so I kind of love them for that reason because they help us revise and review. And I always say if we continue to go at the same rate that we are, we're kind of eventually moving in autopilot. And so like having these sort of like hiccups or just things that aren't going as straight and narrow are helping us see the windiness of a road that needs to be looked at deeper and feel a little bit like, okay, wait, let me ask myself these questions because this actually popped up rather than just like, yeah, that's, I don't love that, but I'm just going to continue doing it this way or something, kind of that, ignorance is bliss kind of, but
Mm.
it's like, wait, hold on.
You know, what's interesting is it's only in the West, it's something I've heard, it's only in the West where we say ignorance is bliss. In so many of the other countries in the world, it's ignorance is death.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that a lot.
I see that came through from them because I don't even that just came out. So I love that you were that's so interesting. Can you say a little bit more about that? I mean, I feel that deeply, but what is your sort of take on that?
Well, in my opinion, this goes into like imperialism and colonialism because over here, in my opinion, we have instant gratification at the touch of a button, which makes it really easy for us to have the option to turn a blind eye to that which is uncomfortable. Whereas in other parts of the world, ignorance is like the opposite of liberation. So here, it's almost like we're putting blinders on, but to our own detriment, to our own demise. But and also the narrative we've been told about what's going on in the West and how we are these great countries, but meanwhile the other people in the world and other countries that have been affected by Western imperialism know the truth that we ourselves who are living in these countries don't even know. So and that's just on a global scale and geopolitics, of course, but even within ourselves, right? If we and of course there's no shaming in this because we we're all on our own journeys in terms of our healing. And so I definitely don't fault anyone for opting to distract themselves. Everyone has their own story, their own pain, and how they cope with that pain. But if you were to apply ignorance is death in terms of what's going on within us and our healing, you can think of it. Another quote that I heard is if you listen to the whispers, you won't hear the screams.
Mm.
So if you were to tune in and to realize, okay, like something is off here and it's maybe not the best thing for me that I'm choosing to react to situations in certain ways. And maybe it's time for me to choose something else. If you start that journey when you're just noticing the subtle hints or signs that your body is giving you, then it won't, get to the point where you don't even have the option to ignore it anymore because it's so overwhelming and debilitating. So, yeah.
Wow. I don't hear the whispers in your ears. That's gonna stay with me for a little bit.
Mm.
Because as I was listening to you, I was also hearing a sort of a take on the ignorance is bliss, because in a way we repeat patterns when we're unaware. And then we are like, why are we in this pattern? Why are we feeling stuck?
Mhm.
And so, in that capacity, it's not necessarily a good thing because we repeat to learn, and sometimes we need to do that a couple of times. Been there myself, but I will say, like, each chart is very unique in itself in a snowflake way, and we have different journeys, different lessons, different things that we're doing. And it's if we keep kind of going at it, it can feel exhausting. So it's like kind of coming to these points in our life where we have to kind of look a little deeper at what's going on within us, maybe, or in the situation, and choosing differently. It almost feels like that's more empowering in a bigger way. I'm going to say an example for people that are listening. Say you have Gemini, Venus. Venus is our values, how we connect, how we relate to people. Let's say it's in your seventh house and you were born with it in retrograde. That could show up with for you like as overthinking or replaying conversations or in relationships, maybe and it could be like different avatar, same soul. And a simple way to work with this is to really, it's here to help you learn about communication within these relationships and noticing the patterns before re-engaging and pausing in and checking in with your values and your intentions. And this creates that space to be more responsive and understanding of rather than to react habitually. And I feel like that's just like right on point of what we're kind of talking about. There's lots of things out there that are laissez-faire, and this is definitely not the season of that. This is the season for us
Mm.
to like look at things that we want to go a little deeper in and make some changes with. Yeah, and be those like advocate detectives.
Several of my clients after a session feel a boost of power, a boost of a sense of power. They feel stronger. They feel, that's the word that they use. I just feel powerful. And they also feel that during the session when I drum, those are the two times
Yeah.
that I really hear the word power coming up. So, you know, and I feel like you've touched on this, but that sense of power, it's always there. It's just that things have blocked it. Things have been piled on top of it. And so somatic practices can help us clear away the things that have been, put on top of it. And also, I think one of the reasons why people feel that sense of power after a somatic session is because the work that I do specifically has to do with connecting with the wounds of abandonment, of rejection, of feeling alone in one's pain, and offering a sense of support to those moments where those wounds were inflicted or where people did not receive the support that they wanted. And so there's something about offering that sense of support that really helps a lot of people feel like I am not alone in this. I've never been alone in this, and I know what support feels like now. And they can tap into that sense of support to empower themselves to move forward and tackle what's next on their journeys. So I can show a really simple exercise that's just kind of quick to
Yeah,
explain
please. Yeah.
and relatively accessible. So if you are able, what I will invite you to do is take either one of your hands and place it on the opposite shoulder. And then you can try a couple of things here. You can try squeezing, releasing, and moving down. Squeeze, release, slide your hand down a little bit. So squeezing, releasing all the way down to your wrist or to your fingertips, whatever feels best for you. When you get to the bottom, switching to the other side. So your other hand on the opposite shoulder, squeezing and releasing all the way down. I am suppressing a yawn right now. So that's how immediate that shift felt for me just now in terms of this little practice helping to regulate my nervous system, helping me settle
Mm,
even more. And if
yeah.
you want to try the other option, it's instead of squeezing, just sliding your arm all the way, sliding your hand all the way down your arm like you're applying lotion. And then switching to the other side and repeating, noticing what feels best, the squeezing or the sliding, choosing what feels best for you, noticing if you're squeezing, do you prefer a really firm squeeze or something just really light and gentle? And same with sliding your hand down. Do you want to feel pressure or do you want just a light feather touch? Do you want to move quickly? Do you want to move slowly? What feels best for you? Tuning into what feels best for you and then choosing that and observing how your soma, how you're experiencing self is responding to your own conscious, very deliberate touch.
But this is just so simple and it
Yes,
feels really good. Actually, I prefer the squeezing personally.
me too.
It's similar
Right.
to, I think, how when you're on the table, you ask us to like scrunch up and then release. It's almost like
Yeah.
a contraction and expansion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jungle Flower, thank you so much for sharing this. It's been incredible, insightful, and like an absolute pleasure to share space with you. So, to help you make the most of your month, I've created a personal PDF with key dates, the season you are in, where your connections can shine, and where aligned action matters the most. You can find that in the show notes.